So I want to show you something. The cool part about this is, let's say that I don't like, okay, I turn, actually let me do this. Let me take it off of heading. Let me take it off of heading so the wings are level. Now watch what happens. I'm going to turn this down. And I'm in wings level mode, but I'm not in heading mode. So if I go to, let's just rotate this so it's 90 degrees off. If I want to go to heading mode now, I just hit, I just hit the heading and execute this. Okay? If I don't like the way that that rolls in, and actually that's not bad, it took me a long time to do that. I can actually change how fast it rolls in and how fast it rolls out. But this is pretty good. It's supposed to go to the wings level there. I mean the wing on that little mark right there, because that's about 17 degrees of bank, 18 degrees of bank right there. So, and I actually got it so it rolls out pretty well here. Yeah, because I worked a long time on this to try to get it right. But let's say that I don't like it. Okay, it didn't roll out fast enough, and actually that doesn't. I was hoping it would break. But anyway. So you can see now these things are together, but they're not. They're supposed to stay together permanently. In a real instrument, they're actually fixed in the back of the card. But I can actually bring up data. Now, it's a little hard to do it. I would normally do it on this screen, not this screen, okay? But I'm going to have to show you, so I'll bring up the thing here. Show you the file. And this is the nasal scripting file that I use, that I rewrote. I mean, it was in existence for a different autopilot, and I just changed everything. So it's just all kinds of code, and I mean, you can see. And I didn't do it all myself. I mean, I'm not a junior Joe, GI Joe programmer here. But I learned as I go and got help from people, and so it's really cool, when you learn. And there's some ideas that are commented out, and you leave notes for yourself. It's really interesting, and I'm sure that Connie understands this. It's really interesting when you're going through the development process, the ideas that you have, but you're not sure how to do them. It's like kind of writing a song. I mean, I've been a drummer for many years, and I've been involved in the songwriting process, although I'm not a songwriter. I'm not a real musician. I just play the drums, that kind of deal. You like leave breadcrumbs for yourself. This is like you just record it. Guitar players are fanatical about that. They're recording something, they're like, I got to get this down, and so they put it down, and it's like 8 seconds, but that's it. And that may turn into the main riff of the tune at some point, but they got the idea down. John Tesh, who knows who John Tesh is? John Tesh, the NBC theme for the basketball, NBA basketball that NBC uses, he sold it, he wrote that. So he tells a story, if you ever listen to him, he tells a story where he was on the road traveling, and while he was on the airplane, he had this thing, an idea in his brain. So when he got to where he was going, he called his home, and he sung into the answering machine, idea for a tune, da 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 da. That's what the guy did, and it recorded on his message machine. So when he got home, there was the idea. But he was halfway around the world, and he recorded it. So you kind of leave yourself breadcrumbs in any way you can, and this is kind of full of those. The development code tends to be full of this stuff. So this is a breadcrumb. But the file that I'm talking about with the autopilot is right here, and it's in XML format. So you can actually, like if we're working on the heading right here, it's a cascading controller, meaning control comes in on stage 1, and it looks at the input property, it looks at a reference property, and it tries to it takes the input property and it tries to, this is the input property, the amount of heading bug error there is. Let me move this out of the way. This is the heading bug right here. And if I move this, let me actually pause. Let me move this out of the way so you can see it. So the heading right now is south. Okay. So it's S is south. So I'm going 180 degrees or south. And so the error, and if I click off this, it's going to go away. But the error is, the heading bug error is between, say, 220 and 180, so about 40 degrees. So what it does is the autopilot actually looks at that and says, okay, well, I want a reference to 0. I don't want that heading, I don't want there to be any error. Okay? When this property, heading hold, is set to true, and I do that in the nasal file, when that property is set to true, I want to look at this property here, get what that degree is, and I want to compare that to 0. This is an error, so there would be a delta, you know, there'd be the difference between two. Wherever the heading bug is and the actual heading of the airplane, that's the delta, so 40 degrees. I want that to be 0, so what do I have to do that? That's the controller. So then I set a turn rate, okay? So then the turn rate then feeds into cascading stage number 2, which is also active when heading hold is set to true. So you look at the turn rate, now that's a reference. So it's looking at my amount of, it's taking and looking at the roll of the airplane, how many degrees it's rolled, and it's looking at what it should be rolled, and then it uses the ailerons to do what it needs to do. So one stage does its thing, generates an output. That output is referenced in the next stage, which then generates the action. So it's a cascading controller, just like in the paper mill, they'd use it for pneumatic controls. It's a PID controller, okay, proportional integrator derivative. You don't have to know calculus, you just have to understand a little bit about it. So you can tweak any of these values right here in the config section, and it will change it all. I mean, for example, let's check this one, and let's say that it's 0.05, let's have fun. Let's make it 0.5, so it's a factor of 10. So when there's an asterisk here, in this editor, the file is stale, so I save it. Now I go up here and I go debug, reload autopilot. So now it's active. I just reloaded the autopilot on the fly. Now watch what happens. It might crash and it might not, okay? Because sometimes it like does a barrel roll, okay? So I can't promise you. It is trial and error, all right? Okay. So it's reacting to that, okay? Now watch what happens when I go heading. So heading hold right now. Roll axis. Heading hold is false right now. Heading hold is off. You can see right here, heading hold is set to false. And those autopilot controllers were only active when it was true. So I'm going to set it, I'm going to execute this function, and it's going to go to true, and look what's happening to the airplane. It's went all haywire. So that's how you tune the autopilot. You're like, oh, no, that won't work. So then you hit pause, and then you go back here, and you go, that's stupid. And you come down here. And you set it at 0 again, and you say save. And it might have taken me 3 days to come up with the right settings for this one controller. And there's a cool way to do it visually that I can't do it because it would take too long, but I can show you. So now I go and I reload the autopilot again. And heading hold is set to true. Let me turn that to false. So I'm going to have the airplane here in a second. So I'm just going to manually fly the airplane a second. And sometimes you kind of have to let the system flush itself out, so to speak. And so we'll turn the heading mod on. And so we're sort of back to normal behavior.